The galaxy was burning. For 30 years, the war between the Velthari Dominion and the Krithos Collective had consumed everything in its path. Entire star systems turned to ash. Billions of lives ended in fire and silence. The two greatest powers in known space fought with a hatred that seemed endless, and every species caught between them had to choose a side or die. Every species except one. On the edge of the galaxy, far from the main battlefields, there was a small pocket of space that belonged to humanity. 14 colonies orbiting yellow and orange stars. A homeworld called Earth. A population of 12 billion spread across worlds that most aliens had never heard of. The humans had discovered faster-than-light travel only 80 years ago. By galactic standards, they were infants. Their ships were small. Their territory was tiny. Their military was laughable compared to the massive fleets that clashed in the galactic core. When the war began, both sides sent diplomats to Earth. The Velthari came first. Their ambassador was a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms. He stood before the United Terran Coalition's council and spoke of honor, of duty, of the threat that the Krithos posed to all civilized life. "Join us," he said. "Together we will crush the Krithos and bring peace to the galaxy. You will have our protection. You will have our technology. You will have a place in the new order we will build." The human leaders listened politely. They asked questions, they took notes, and then they said no. The Krithos came next. Their ambassador was shorter, covered in hard black scales, with eyes that glowed red in the dim light of the council chamber. He spoke of strength, of survival, of the weakness of the Velthari. "Join us," he said. "The Velthari are dying. Their empire crumbles. We are the future. Stand with us and you will share in our victory. Stand against us and you will share in their defeat." The human leaders listened politely. They asked questions, they took notes, and then they said no. Both ambassadors left confused and angry. The humans had chosen neutrality. They would not fight for either side. They would not allow military vessels from either faction to enter their space. They would not provide resources or intelligence or support of any kind. The galaxy laughed. "Cowards," the Velthari generals said. "They hide in their little corner of space and pretend the war does not exist. They are irrelevant." "Weaklings," the Krithos commanders agreed. "They have no honor, they have no courage, they are beneath our notice." And so the war continued, and humanity was forgotten. But not everyone dismissed the humans so easily. Ambassador Kethra of the Velthari Dominion was old. He had served his people for 200 years, and he had learned to watch carefully and speak little. After his failed mission to Earth, he did not return home immediately. Instead, he stayed at the edge of human space for several months, observing. What he saw troubled him. Human ships patrolled their borders constantly. Not warships, at least they did not look like warships. They were small vessels with powerful sensors, and they watched everything. Every battle that occurred within sensor range was recorded. Every weapon fired, every tactic used, every ship destroyed. The humans were studying the war. Kethra also noticed something else. Construction activity around human colonies had increased dramatically. New stations were being built in the asteroid belts. New facilities were appearing on moons and planets. The humans claimed these were mining operations and research outposts, but there was something strange about the energy signatures coming from these locations. When Kethra returned home, he requested a meeting with the High Council. He stood before the most powerful leaders of the Velthari Dominion and delivered his warning. "The humans are not hiding from the war," he said. "They are preparing for something. I do not know what they are building, but I believe we should be concerned." The High Council listened politely. They asked questions, they took notes. And then they ignored him. "The humans are primitives," the war minister said. "They discovered space travel less than a century ago. They have no industrial base. They have no military tradition. Even if they wanted to threaten us, they could not. But the construction activity, Kethra began. Mining operations, the war minister interrupted. Nothing more. We have real enemies to worry about, Ambassador. The Krethos are pushing into our territory. We cannot waste resources monitoring a species that poses no threat. Kethra bowed his head and left the council chamber. He knew he was right, but he could not prove it. And so he did the only thing he could do. He continued to watch. 15 years passed. The war grew worse. Both sides were exhausted. Resources were running low. Entire fleets had been destroyed and rebuilt and destroyed again. The original reasons for the war had been forgotten. Now they fought simply because they had always fought, because stopping would mean admitting that all the death and destruction had been for nothing. On Earth, the humans continued their quiet existence. They traded with neutral species. They expanded their colonies slowly and carefully. They welcomed refugees from the war, giving them homes and food and safety. And in secret, they continued to build. Deep beneath the surface of moons and asteroids, massive shipyards worked day and night. Factories produced weapons that no alien had ever seen. Scientists studied the data collected from 30 years of observation and developed technologies that should have taken centuries to create. The project had a name. It was called Prometheus, after an old human myth about a being who stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity. Fleet Admiral Chen stood in the command center of the largest hidden shipyard, watching the construction of her newest vessel. She was 60 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent her entire career preparing for a war that she hoped would never come. "Status report," she said. 3,000 vessels ready for deployment, her aide replied. "Another 500 will be completed within the year. All crews are trained and standing by." Chen nodded slowly. "And the weapon systems?" "Fully operational. The plasma lances have exceeded all performance expectations. The shield technology is 30 years ahead of anything in the galactic database." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Good. Let us hope we never have to use them." Her aide hesitated. "Admiral, do you really think we can stay out of the war forever?" Chen turned to look at the young officer. Her smile faded. "No," she said quietly. "Sooner or later someone will make a mistake. Someone will decide that we are weak. Someone will cross a line that cannot be uncrossed. And when that happens, we will be ready." She turned back to watch the shipyard, where humanity's secret fleet grew larger with each passing day. "We will be ready," she repeated, "and they will learn what happens when you wake a sleeping giant." The Krethos Collective was losing the war. After 45 years of fighting, their fleets were broken. Their worlds were starving. Their people were tired of death and sacrifice for a victory that seemed to move further away with each passing year. The Velthari were not winning either, but they were losing more slowly, and in a war of exhaustion, that was enough. Supreme Commander Voreth stood before the War Council, his scaled face twisted with frustration. The holographic map in front of him showed the current state of the conflict. Red zones for Krethos territory, blue zones for Velthari territory, and there, at the edge of the map, a small cluster of yellow dots. "Human space. We need resources," Voreth said. "Our mining operations cannot keep up with our losses. Our factories are running at half capacity. If we do not find new sources of material soon, we will be forced to surrender within 5 years. The neutral systems, one of his generals began, are defended by species we cannot afford to antagonize, Voreth interrupted. The Merchants Guild would cut off all trade. The Assembly of Free Worlds would join the Velthari. We would make our situation worse, not better. He pointed at the yellow dots on the map. But the humans are different. They have no allies, no powerful friends. Their space contains rich deposits of rare minerals, and their military is pathetic. They have declared neutrality, another general said carefully. If we attack them, the galaxy will condemn us. Voreth laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. The galaxy will do nothing. The Velthari are too busy fighting us to care about a few human colonies. The neutral powers will make angry speeches and then continue trading with whoever wins, and the humans themselves, he waved a clawed hand dismissively. They are sheep. They will surrender at the first sign of force. The War Council voted. The decision was unanimous. 2 weeks later, a Krithos fleet of 200 warships entered human space. Their target was New Helsinki, a colony world at the border of Terran territory. It was a beautiful planet with blue oceans and green continents, home to 4 million people. Farmers and miners and teachers and doctors, families who had built new lives far from Earth. The Krithos fleet arrived without warning. They surrounded the planet and began broadcasting on all frequencies. Attention, human colony. This world now belongs to the Krithos Collective. You will surrender immediately. All resources and infrastructure will be transferred to Krithos control. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. On the surface, Governor Sarah Chen, no relation to Fleet Admiral Chen, watched the alien ships fill the sky. She was a calm woman, known for her steady leadership during times of crisis, but even she felt fear as she counted the enemy vessels. "Send a message to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them what is happening, and activate the emergency shelters. Get as many people underground as possible." The message was sent, then they waited. The Krithos commander was named Torvik. He was young and ambitious, eager to prove himself in battle. When the humans did not respond to his demands within 1 hour, he grew impatient. "They are stalling," he said to his officers. "They hope for rescue that will not come. We will show them the cost of defiance." "Commander," his tactical officer said carefully, "our orders were to secure the colony's resources. If we damage the infrastructure, we will damage their will to resist," Torvik snapped. "Choose a target, something that will break their spirit." The tactical officer studied the surface scans for a long moment. Then he highlighted a building in the capital city. "This structure houses their medical facilities," he said, "including their primary center for treating sick and injured children. Destroying it would demonstrate our willingness to do it." The first plasma bombardment hit the children's hospital at midday, when the building was full of young patients and their families. The second bombardment hit the surrounding residential district. The third hit the emergency shelters where thousands of civilians had taken refuge. In less than 1 hour, 2.3 million people were dead. Governor Chen was among them. Her last act was sending a final message to Earth, documenting the attack with footage from the city's cameras. She died with her staff, trying to coordinate rescue efforts that would never come. Commander Torvik watched the destruction with satisfaction. "Send a message to the other human colonies," he ordered. "Tell them that New Helsinki was a demonstration. Tell them that surrender is their only option. Tell them that resistance means death." The message was sent, then they waited. For 6 hours, there was silence from Earth. Torvik began to worry. He had expected panic. He had expected surrender. He had expected the humans to behave like the frightened primitives everyone said they were. Instead, there was nothing. "Scan for incoming vessels," he ordered. "No contacts detected," his sensor officer reported. "Human space appears quiet." Then where is their response? Where are their pleas for mercy? No one had an answer. On Earth, the government had received Governor Chen's final message. They had watched the footage of the bombardment. They had seen the children's hospital collapse into burning rubble. They had counted the dead. Fleet Admiral Chen, who had just learned that her distant cousin was among the victims, stood before the emergency council. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands were shaking. "The decision is yours," she said to the council. "I have given you my recommendation, but the decision is yours." The council voted. The decision was unanimous. Admiral Chen returned to her command center and opened a channel to every military installation in human space. Her voice was calm and steady, even though tears were running down her face. "All units, this is Fleet Admiral Chen. Execute Order Prometheus. I repeat, execute Order Prometheus. This is not a drill." Across human space, hidden shipyards opened their doors. Secret installations powered up their engines. 3,000 warships that the galaxy did not know existed began moving toward a single destination. Then Admiral Chen opened a channel to every communication system in the galaxy, every alien species, every neutral power, both sides of the war, everyone. Her message was simple. "This is Fleet Admiral Chen of the United Terran Coalition. 12 hours ago, Krithos military forces attacked our colony of New Helsinki. They bombarded civilian targets, including a hospital for children. 2.3 million of our people are dead." She paused, her voice hardened. "To the Krithos Collective, you have been warned repeatedly to respect our borders. You chose not to listen. You chose to murder our children." Another pause. "To the Velthari Dominion, you had vessels within sensor range of New Helsinki. You detected the Krithos fleet entering our space. You watched the bombardment happen. You did nothing." Her final words echoed across the galaxy. "To everyone listening, you crossed the last line. God help you, because we will not." The transmission ended. Commander Torvik, still orbiting the ruins of New Helsinki, felt a cold feeling spreading through his chest. "Get me the Supreme Commander," he said, "now." Before the connection could be established, his sensor officer spoke in a voice filled with confusion and fear. "Commander, I'm detecting incoming contacts, multiple FTL signatures. I don't understand these readings." "How many ships?" The sensor officer looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes. "Thousands." Commander Torvik stared at his sensor display and felt his world crumbling around him. The readings made no sense. 3,000 contacts, 3,000 ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation around his fleet. Human ships, ships that should not exist. "That's impossible," he whispered. "The humans don't have 3,000 ships. They don't have 300 ships." "Commander, they're hailing us," his communications officer said. Torvik took a deep breath and tried to compose himself. "Put it through." The face that appeared on his screen was human, a woman with gray hair and cold eyes. She wore a military uniform covered in medals and insignia that Torvik did not recognize. "I am Fleet Admiral Chen of the United Terran Coalition," she said. Her voice was flat and emotionless. "You are Commander Torvik of the Krithos Collective. You are responsible for the deaths of 2.3 million civilians, including the destruction of New Helsinki Children's Hospital." Torvik opened his mouth to respond, but Chen continued without pause. "You have one opportunity to surrender. Power down your weapons and shields. Prepare to be boarded. You and your officers will face trial for war crimes. Your crews will be detained until the end of hostilities. This is your only warning." For a moment, Torvik considered surrender. The human fleet surrounded him completely. Their ships were unlike anything in the galactic database, sleek vessels covered in weapons that his computer could not identify. Their power signatures were enormous. But surrender meant disgrace. Surrender meant admitting that he had made a catastrophic mistake, and some part of Torvik still believed that the humans were bluffing, that their ships were just empty shells meant to frighten him. "You are the ones who should surrender," he said, forcing confidence into his voice. "The Krithos Collective will send reinforcements. Your little fleet cannot stand against the full power of—" "Your choice is made," Admiral Chen interrupted. "May whatever gods you worship have mercy on your souls." The transmission ended. The Battle of New Helsinki lasted 11 minutes. The Krethos opened fire first, launching missiles and plasma beams at the nearest human ships. Their weapons were powerful. They had destroyed entire Velthari fleets with these weapons. The missiles exploded harmlessly against human shields. The plasma beams splashed across hulls designed to absorb and redirect energy. Not a single human ship was damaged. Then the humans returned fire. The weapons they used were something new. Concentrated beams of energy that cut through Krethos' shields like they did not exist. Torpedoes that seemed to phase through armor before detonating inside the ships. Electronic warfare systems that shut down targeting computers and navigation systems. Commander Torvik watched his fleet die around him. One by one, his ships exploded or went dark. Officers screamed for orders, but there were no orders to give. There was nothing that could be done. His flagship was the last to fall. As the human weapons tore through his bridge, Torvik had time for one final thought. We made a terrible mistake. Then there was fire, and then there was nothing. Across the galaxy, intelligence agencies scrambled to understand what had happened. The humans had been dismissed as primitives. Their technology was supposed to be decades behind the major powers. Their military was supposed to be tiny and poorly equipped. Everything the galaxy knew about humanity was wrong. Within hours, information began leaking from human space. Defectors and spies and captured communications revealed the truth. For 80 years, since the moment they discovered faster-than-light travel, humanity had been preparing for war. They had built shipyards in secret locations throughout their territory. They had studied every weapon and every tactic used in the galactic conflict. They had developed technologies that combined the best of alien science with human innovation. And they had waited. The 14 colonies that the galaxy saw were just the surface. Beneath those colonies, inside asteroids and moons and hidden stations, humanity had built an industrial base capable of producing thousands of warships. They had trained millions of soldiers. They had prepared for the day when someone would be foolish enough to attack them. Project Prometheus was not just a weapons program. It was an entire civilization hidden in plain sight. The Velthari Dominion was the first to react. High Counselor Verath sent a diplomatic mission to Earth within days of the battle. His message was one of friendship and alliance. "The Krethos are our common enemy," his ambassador declared before the Human Council. "We have fought them for 45 years. We share your outrage at their atrocity. Let us join forces and destroy them together." The Human Council listened politely. They asked questions. They took notes. Then Admiral Chen spoke. "Ambassador," she said, "our intelligence services have provided us with detailed records of the New Helsinki massacre. We know exactly what happened and when it happened. We know which ships were involved. We know which commanders gave which orders." She leaned forward. "We also know that a Velthari patrol fleet was positioned less than 2 light hours from New Helsinki. Your ships detected the Krethos fleet entering our space. They tracked the movement of the enemy vessels. They recorded the bombardment." The ambassador's face went pale. "They had time to warn us," Admiral Chen continued. "They had time to intervene. Your ships could have reached New Helsinki before the Krethos began their attack. But your commanders chose to watch. They chose to let our people die." "Admiral Chen, I assure you." "Your government made a calculation," Chen interrupted. "You decided that a Krethos attack on human space would weaken both your enemy and a potential future rival. You decided that 2.3 million human lives were an acceptable price for that advantage." She stood up. "You were wrong." The ambassador tried to speak, but Chen raised her hand. "The United Terran Coalition has reviewed the evidence. We have considered all factors, and we have reached a decision." She looked directly at the ambassador with eyes full of cold fury. Humanity declares war on the Krithos Collective for their unprovoked attack on our people, and humanity declares war on the Velthari Dominion for their complicity in that attack. The ambassador stumbled backward. You cannot be serious. You cannot fight both of us. It's suicide. We have 3,000 ships in active service, Admiral Chen replied. We have another 2,000 under construction. Our weapons are superior to anything in your arsenals. Our soldiers are trained for exactly this scenario. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You wanted the humans to join your war, ambassador. Congratulations, we have joined. Within hours, human fleets began mobilizing throughout Terran space. Their destination was not the border. Their destination was the galactic core, where both the Velthari and Krithos had their most important systems. The message that accompanied their departure was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, to every corner of the galaxy. Remember New Helsinki. Ambassador Kethra, the old Velthari diplomat who had warned his people about humanity years ago, watched the news from his retirement home. He felt no satisfaction in being proven right. He felt only sorrow for what was coming. I told them, he said to no one in particular. I told them the humans were watching. I told them the humans were preparing. He closed his eyes. And now everyone will learn what happens when you make an enemy of a species that was willing to wait 80 years for the right moment to strike. On Earth, in the memorial garden that had already been established for the victims of New Helsinki, a young soldier stood before the newly planted trees. Each tree represented 1,000 dead. There were 2,300 trees. The soldier's name was James. His sister had been a nurse at the children's hospital. I'm coming, he whispered to the trees. We're all coming, and we won't stop until the people who did this answer for every single life they took. He turned and walked toward the transport that would take him to his ship. The war had begun. 6 months after the Battle of New Helsinki, the galaxy had learned to fear humanity. The war that had dragged on for 45 years between the Velthari and the Krithos changed completely when the humans entered. Both alien powers had expected the newcomers to be a minor nuisance, easily crushed or ignored while they continued their eternal struggle against each other. They were wrong. Human fleets moved through space with terrifying speed and precision. They struck military bases and supply lines. They disabled weapon factories and shipyards. They captured strategic systems that both powers had fought over for decades. And they did it without committing atrocities. This confused the aliens more than anything else. The Krithos had bombarded civilian cities. The Velthari had used biological weapons against enemy populations. Both sides considered such tactics normal parts of warfare. But the humans were different. Admiral Chen had issued strict orders to every ship in the fleet. No attacks on civilian targets. No orbital bombardments of populated areas. No weapons of mass destruction. Any officer who violated these rules would face court-martial and execution. We are not monsters, she told her commanders. We fight to protect our people and to punish those who harmed them. We do not fight to become the things we hate. The strategy was simple but effective. Human forces would enter a system and immediately secure all civilian infrastructure. Power plants, hospitals, food distribution centers, all were protected. Then they would systematically destroy every military target in the system. The alien populations, expecting destruction, instead found themselves alive and mostly unharmed. Human soldiers distributed food and medical supplies. Human engineers restored damaged infrastructure. Human officers explained that they had no quarrel with ordinary people, only with the governments that had allowed the New Helsinki massacre to happen. Many aliens did not believe them at first, but as weeks turned into months, the truth became clear. The humans were fighting a war of justice, not a war of conquest. This made them more dangerous, not less. Soldiers who believed in their cause fought harder than soldiers who fought for territory or resources. Human troops showed endurance that amazed their enemies. They could march for days without rest. They could survive injuries that would kill most species. They formed bonds with their units that made them fight to the death rather than abandon their comrades. The Velthari generals studied the humans and tried to understand their psychology. They learned that humans came from a high-gravity world, which made them stronger and more durable than most species. They learned that humans had evolved as persistent hunters, capable of chasing prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. But what frightened the Velthari most was something else. Humans had a concept they called righteous anger. When humans believed they were fighting for a just cause, their determination became nearly unstoppable. And every human soldier knew what had happened at New Helsinki. The Krithos Collective was the first to break. After losing 30 major systems in 4 months, Supreme Commander Vorath made a desperate decision. He had seen how the humans protected civilian populations. He had seen how they refused to use weapons of mass destruction. He believed this was weakness. He decided to exploit that weakness. A Krithos strike force was sent to the human colony of New Eden. Their mission was simple: deploy a biological weapon that targeted human children. Kill enough young humans, and the enemy would lose their will to fight. The strike force never reached their target. Human intelligence had intercepted their communications. A defense fleet was waiting for them. But the interception revealed the Krithos' plan to the entire human military. Admiral Chen read the intelligence report in silence. Her staff watched her face, waiting for her reaction. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she spoke, and her voice was colder than anyone had ever heard it. "They tried to kill our children, again." She stood up. "Contact all fleet commanders. New orders are being issued. The Krithos Collective is no longer to be treated as a conventional enemy. They are to be treated as a threat to human survival." "Admiral," one of her officers asked carefully, "what exactly does that mean?" Chen looked at him. "It means we stop being gentle." The assault on the Krithos home system began 2 weeks later. Humanity sent everything they had: 2,000 warships, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, weapons platforms that could crack planets. The Krithos had built defenses around their homeworld for centuries. They believed no force in the galaxy could break through. The battle lasted 3 weeks. Human ships absorbed punishment that should have destroyed them. Human soldiers landed on Krithos' military installations and fought hand-to-hand against defenders. Human engineers systematically dismantled every piece of military infrastructure in the system. Supreme Commander Vorath died on the bridge of his flagship, still giving orders to ships that no longer existed. When it was over, the Krithos home system was unrecognizable. Every military base was destroyed. Every shipyard was rubble. Every weapons factory was gone. The Krithos fleet, once the terror of the galaxy, had ceased to exist. But Admiral Chen kept her promise. The civilian populations were untouched. Cities still stood. Hospitals still functioned. Schools still taught children. The Krithos were not destroyed. They were simply removed from the galactic stage. Human forces established a quarantine around the Krithos home systems. No ships could enter or leave. No military technology could be developed. The Krithos were reduced to a pre-spaceflight civilization, trapped on their own worlds until humanity decided otherwise. It was a punishment more terrifying than genocide. The Krithos would live, but they would live knowing they had lost everything because of their own choices. The Velthari Dominion watched the fall of their ancient enemy with horror. High Counselor Verath called an emergency meeting of his government. The situation was clear. The humans had destroyed the Krithos in less than 6 months. The Velthari could not hope to resist them alone. "We must negotiate," Verath said. We must surrender before they do to us what they did to the Krithos." "Surrender," one of his generals shouted. "The Velthari have never surrendered in our entire history." "The Velthari have never faced an enemy like this," Varath replied. "Look at what they did. Look at how fast they did it. And remember, they did it while fighting on two fronts. Now they can focus entirely on us." The argument raged for hours. Some wanted to fight, some wanted to flee, some wanted to negotiate. In the end, it did not matter what they wanted. A human ambassador arrived at the Velthari capital 3 days later. She carried a simple message from Admiral Chen. "You have one choice: unconditional surrender. Your government will be dissolved. Your military leaders will face trial for war crimes. Your society will be restructured according to principles established by the United Terran Coalition." "And if we refuse?" Varath asked. The ambassador looked at him without pity. "Then look at the Krithos home system and imagine your worlds in their place. We would prefer not to do that, but we will if we must." Varath closed his eyes. "How long do we have to decide?" "You have until tomorrow morning. After that, our fleets will begin their advance." The ambassador left. Varath sat alone in his chambers for a long time, thinking about the choices his people had made, about the patrol fleet that had watched New Helsinki burn, about the calculation that had seemed so clever at the time. "We thought they were sheep," he whispered to himself. "We thought we could use them against each other." He laughed bitterly. "We were the sheep, and we invited wolves into our home." The next morning, the Velthari Dominion surrendered unconditionally. The war was over. 2 years after the New Helsinki massacre, the galaxy was at peace. It was a strange and uncomfortable peace for many species. They had spent so long living in fear of the Velthari and the Krithos that they did not know how to live without that fear. Now both powers were gone, one quarantined, one dissolved, and the humans stood where they had once stood. The United Terran Coalition did not claim an empire. They did not occupy alien worlds or demand tribute from conquered peoples. Instead, they established something they called the Terran Accords. The Accords were simple. Every spacefaring species was invited to sign them. The rules were clear and applied equally to everyone. No species would wage aggressive war against another. No species would target civilian populations. No species would stand idle while atrocities occurred. No species would develop weapons of mass destruction. And if any species violated these rules, humanity would respond. Some species signed immediately, grateful for the protection the Accords offered. Others hesitated, suspicious of human motives. A few refused entirely, claiming that the Accords were just another form of imperialism. Those species found themselves isolated, not conquered, not attacked, simply cut off from trade and communication with the rest of the galaxy. Most of them eventually reconsidered their decision. On Earth, the government struggled with its new role. They had prepared for war, not for peace. They had trained soldiers, not diplomats. Many humans questioned whether they had the right to impose their values on the rest of the galaxy. Admiral Chen, now retired from active service, gave a speech to the United Terran Coalition Council 6 months after the war ended. Her words were broadcast across human space. "We did not ask for this responsibility," she said. "We wanted to be left alone. We wanted to build our colonies and raise our families and live our lives in peace. But that choice was taken from us the moment the Krithos bombed New Helsinki." She paused. "Now we have a choice to make. We can use our power to dominate and control, like the Velthari and Krithos before us. We can build an empire on fear and force. Many species expect us to do exactly that." Her voice grew stronger. "But that is not who we are. We are the species that watched a galactic war for 45 years and refused to participate. We are the species that won a war without committing atrocities. We are the species that punished our enemies but did not destroy them." She looked directly at the council. "Our power means nothing if we use it for selfish ends. Our victory means nothing if we become the monsters we defeated. We must be better than those who came before us. We must prove that strength can serve justice, not just conquest." The council voted to maintain the accords as they were. No expansion of human territory. No demands for resources or tribute. Only the enforcement of basic rules designed to prevent another New Helsinki from ever happening. Years passed. The galaxy slowly healed. Former Velthari officers faced trial for war crimes. Some were executed. Others were imprisoned. Many were simply forbidden from holding any position of authority for the rest of their lives. The Velthari people, freed from their old government, began building something new. Human advisors helped them establish democratic institutions. Human educators taught their children about the war from perspectives their old government had hidden from them. It was not easy. Generations of hatred could not be erased overnight, but slowly, carefully, progress was made. The Krithos quarantine remained in place. Human ships patrolled the borders of their space, ensuring that no vessels entered or left. Inside the quarantine zone, the Krithos were forced to live without the technology that had once made them a galactic power. Some humans argued that this was too cruel, that the Krithos should be given a chance to prove they had changed. That permanent quarantine was a punishment that would last forever. Admiral Chen, when asked about this, gave a simple answer. "They tried to kill our children. Twice. Some crimes cannot be forgiven. Some punishments must be permanent. The Krithos will remain where they are until the heat death of the universe, or until every human who remembers New Helsinki is dead." She looked at the questioner with hard eyes. "Currently, I remember New Helsinki very well." The questioner did not ask again. On a space station orbiting the ruins of New Helsinki, a memorial museum opened 10 years after the massacre. Millions of visitors came from across the galaxy to see the exhibits. They walked through halls filled with photographs of the dead. They read testimonies from survivors. They watched footage of the bombardment that had killed 2.3 million people. At the center of the museum was a single room. It contained nothing but names. The walls were covered with the names of every person who died that day. It took visitors hours to read them all. Outside the museum, on the surface of the memorial moon that had been constructed in orbit around the planet, there was a garden. Each of the 2.3 million dead had a tree planted in their memory. The forest stretched across the entire moon, visible from space. A Velthari historian named Kethra, the same Kethra who had once warned his people about humanity, visited the memorial in the 15th year after the war. He was very old now, his silver skin faded and wrinkled. A young human officer served as his guide. They walked through the museum in silence. When they reached the room of names, Kethra stopped and stared at the walls for a long time. "I tried to warn them," he said finally. "I told the High Council that the humans were dangerous. I told them that your species was watching and preparing. They did not listen." The human officer nodded, but said nothing. "I have a question," Kethra said, "one that has bothered me for many years." "Ask." Kethra turned to face the young human. "You had this power for 80 years. You could have ended the war between my people and the Krithos at any time. You could have saved billions of lives on both sides. Why did you wait? Why did you let so many die when you could have stopped it?" The officer was quiet for a moment. Then he walked to the window and looked out at the forest of memorial trees. "Because we needed to be sure," he said. "Sure that we were fighting for the right reasons. Sure that we were not just another empire using force to get what it wanted." He turned back to Kethra. "Power without principle is just tyranny with better weapons. We waited until we had no choice, until our cause was just beyond any doubt, until the galaxy could see that we were not aggressors but defenders. Cathro considered this. And now, you have more power than any species in galactic history. What will you do with it? The officer smiled faintly. Hopefully, nothing. We will watch. We will wait. We will pray that no one is ever stupid enough to cross that line again. He looked back at the forest. And if they do, we will be ready, just like before. Kethra nodded slowly. I believe you, he said, and I believe the galaxy is safer because of it. 100 years after the New Helsinki massacre, the galaxy knew a peace it had never experienced before. Wars had not ended entirely. There were still conflicts, still violence, still tragedy. But the great wars, the wars that consumed entire civilizations, those were gone. The humans watched over everything. Their fleets patrolled the borders between species. Their diplomats mediated disputes. Their soldiers responded when the accords were violated. They were not loved. They were not hated. They were respected in the way that one respects a force of nature, a hurricane, an earthquake, something powerful and dangerous that must be treated carefully. On the memorial moon orbiting New Helsinki, a new inscription was added to the main monument. It was written in every language in the galaxy, and it said, 2.3 million voices silenced, a galaxy answered, never again. And in the command center of Earth's orbital defense platform, a new generation of human officers monitored the stars. They trained constantly. They maintained their weapons. They prepared for threats that might never come. Because they remembered the lesson of their ancestors. Peace was wonderful, peace was precious, peace was worth any price. But peace was only possible because somewhere, someone was ready for war. And humanity would always be ready.